What if you could flip a switch on a computer and solve a country's revenue problems? You know, plug billion-dollar leaks in the system, just like that. Well, that's the incredible promise behind a brand new and very controversial AI system in Ghana. But it's also kicking off a huge fight between the government and its own traders. Today, we're going to unpack that whole thing.
All right, let's just start with a number that is really hard to ignore. Imagine a single piece of software that could bring in an extra $3.5 million for a country every single day. That is the unbelievable potential of Ghana's new Publican AI system.
But here's the twist. If this thing is such a financial game changer, why are the very people who use the ports, the importers, the traders, so angry that they're talking about bringing the country's entire economy to a standstill? That's the conflict we're digging into today. We're going to look at the powerful arguments for this new tech and the really serious accusations against it. And we're able to bring you this deep dive with support from our partners at Finex Insights.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, the case for the AI. Then, the case against it. We'll zoom out to see the bigger picture, and then we'll try to figure out a final verdict. So first up, let's put ourselves in the government's shoes. Why would they roll out a system that they knew would be controversial? Well, the answer starts with trying to plug some absolutely massive holes in the budget.
The whole argument for this system really kicks off with this number. The AI has supposedly already found 11 billion Ghanaian cedis in money that should have been collected but wasn't. Just to put that into perspective, that's over 700 million US dollars. That's enough to pay for the country's entire high school education budget for a whole year. This was money that was just gone.
And looking forward, the potential is even bigger. The supporters of this system project that it could boost the money coming in from the ports by a jaw-dropping 40 to 45% every year. For a country like Ghana, a jump like that isn't just big, it's potentially transformative. And it's not just about the cash. The improvements in pure speed are pretty incredible. A customs form that used to take a person 2 hours to check can now be processed by the AI in just 5 minutes. That's a massive difference for how fast goods can move.
So, for the people who support this, the key argument isn't just about money or speed, it's about fairness. You see, the AI looks at every single declaration, not just a few samples. This takes a lot of the human decision-making out of it, which means fewer opportunities for bribery or special deals. The idea is to make it a level playing field for the businesses that are actually playing by the rules. Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it over and look at the case against this system. Because for the importers and traders on the ground, this so-called digital revolution feels a whole lot different. To really get their argument, you have to understand this one key rule in global trade. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, has a principle called transaction value. Basically, it means customs taxes have to be based on the actual price you paid for something, the price on your invoice.
And that brings us to the main accusation from the critics. They say this AI completely ignores the invoice price. Instead, it uses its own secret data to decide what something is worth, creating what they call a de facto minimum value regime. Basically, they're saying the AI has its own price list, and it doesn't care what your receipt says, a clear violation of that WTO rule.
So what does this look like in the real world? Well, the examples people are reporting are pretty shocking. In one case, the import taxes on a used 2012 minivan were set at almost 8 million cedis. That's over $500,000 US for a minivan. In another, a shipment of vital farm supplies saw its taxes more than double, jumping to the equivalent of almost $150,000 US.
And what happens if you disagree with the AI's valuation, which comes out of this mysterious black box? Well, that's where it gets even messier. The only way to appeal is to go through a central office in the capital city, Accra. So while you're waiting for your case to be heard, your shipment is just sitting at the port, and you're getting charged expensive storage fees for every single day it sits there. Your business is basically being held hostage.
So as you can imagine, this whole thing is way bigger than just a day-to-day operational dispute. Critics are now raising some really serious questions about the contract itself and the company that's running this whole system.
So who's actually behind the curtain here? The contract went to a company called Trudeau Investments. Now here's what's known. They're registered in Cyprus. They were only formed in late 2023, and they appear to have zero public track record in this very specific, very complex field of customs AI.
This situation creates what economists call a moral hazard. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. Think about it like this. If you had insurance that covered absolutely everything, no matter what, you might be a little less careful with, say, fire. It's when someone has an incentive to take a big risk because they don't have to pay the price if it all goes wrong.
And when you look at the contract, you see why people are worried about this. It's all based on revenue sharing. TrueDare Investments gets to keep somewhere between 13 and 20% of all the extra money the AI brings in. This creates a massive financial incentive for them to set the highest possible taxes, no matter what the consequences are for traders or the economy. And the concerns go even wider. Groups like CropLife Ghana are warning that jacking up the costs on things like fertilizer and pesticides could actually threaten the country's food security. They're worried it might push farmers to use cheaper but dangerous counterfeit products. And then there's the big strategic question. Is it a good idea for a country to give an unproven foreign company control over something as important as its ports?
So, after hearing all that from both sides, it brings us right back to where we started. Is this Publican AI system a massive step forward, or is it a disaster waiting to happen?
When you boil it all down, the entire fight comes down to this core tension. On one side, you have the incredible promise of a financial turnaround, huge new revenue, a real fight against corruption, and a fairer market for everyone. But on the other side, you have the peril. Accusations of breaking international law, choking businesses with red tape, and a contract that seems built on a moral hazard.
And that leaves us with a really tough question, one that's a lot bigger than just Ghana. When a country is trying to raise money and control its own finances, where does it draw the line between that and its promise to follow global rules and ensure fair trade for its own people? There's no easy answer, but in this age of AI, it's a question more and more countries are going to have to face.